listening to the Esq.Marketing podcast, hosted by Matthew Lauren, president of Esq.Marketing, where he features successful solo and SMB law firms from all over the United States. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, I'm Matthew Lauren, president of Esq.Marketing, and you're listening to the Esq.Marketing podcast, where I feature successful solo and SMB law firms from all over the United States. This episode is brought to you by Esq.Marketing. We help law firms generate more clients and cases using search engine marketing. Speaking of successful lawyers, today I have personal injury lawyer Bert Polito of Polito and Harrington. Bert has been a practicing attorney in Connecticut and Rhode Island for over 3 decades. Among other accolades throughout his career, he's been named Lawyer of the Year by Best Lawyers for 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2019, as well as a fellow of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. Bert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matthew. Good to be here.
Awesome. Good to have you. Bert, let's just get started with an easy one. Tell me a little bit about your firm. What kind of cases do you guys focus on?
Matthew, I have a partner, James Harrington, so we're a 2-attorney firm focused exclusively on plaintiffs' personal injury litigation. As you said, we practice in Connecticut and in Rhode Island. James is also admitted in Massachusetts. And in Connecticut, we have 2 large tribal-owned casinos that have their own court system. So we also practice in those tribal courts as well.
That's extremely interesting. So there's the PI side of it, and then there's the tribal law. I've not really seen a lot of lawyers involved in that part.
Yeah, and you might imagine there are a number of incidents that can occur at casinos by visitors from really all over New England. So if to the extent those people sustain some sort of life-changing injury, we've represented them as well.
Gotcha. That's really neat. Yeah. So take me back to the beginning, Bert. I mean, you've obviously been practicing for a long time. What was it like in the beginning, just starting off your law firm?
You know, I should tell you, Matthew, that I had the good fortune of meeting a lawyer who was a practicing attorney when I was in law school, who had his own law firm. And he invited me to join his firm. So I practiced with him for over 16 years. And really, that was a great experience. He and his partner were excellent mentors to me. I learned a lot about the actual trying of cases, and I'm really grateful to them to this day. What was interesting is that about 16 years into that work, I came kind of a watershed moment. And that for me was I had a certain desire to start my own law firm. And it took some deep thought, talking to people who I trust, and basically took a deep breath and said, I'm going to do it. And I think I realized at that point, a lot of us who do what we do have a certain entrepreneurial spirit, you know, that desire just to start your own shop and to make it yours. I very much respected what the people I had worked with had created, and now it was my opportunity to do the same. So, but it wasn't done without some trepidation. You know, it's a risk. I had a good, solid situation where I was, but I wanted to build something that was more in my own vision. You know?
And that was that in the you had already been practicing for 16 years when you did that?
That's right.
In the 90s, early 2000s?
Exactly right. So I did reach out to someone with whom I had worked, and he joined me. And I will say, starting out, we were fortunate because a number of the folks I had been representing previously came with me, but there were so many basic things we had to develop and work very hard to do. And I will tell you, you know, that's probably where, fortunately, some good life experience I already had kicked in. You know, you and I have spoken before. I mean, one of the unique things about me that I'm very proud of is I'm one of 12 children, and I
love big families. That's so cool.
Yeah, and when I look at my own life and think about certain qualities that have been important to me running a law firm, I realize I was fortunate enough to learn certain things before I ever walked out the front door of my house, you know. That you don't take certain things for granted. You do have to work hard for what you get. You learn to be grateful you kind of have to figure out early on what matters the most and what matters the least. And you have to be resilient. because things don't always go your way, and you have to work, be able to collaborate, to work with people. So a lot of those things kicked in, I think, in starting my own firm, and I think those have served me well. So if I could encourage a younger lawyer or a lawyer thinking about doing this, to just remember those things, it's going to be hard. And you can't take anything for granted. You're really going to have to work very, very hard. The other thing I just learned is to reach out to people who knew more than I did about certain things.
Very true. Very true.
And unfortunately, people were more than willing to share, their knowledge, and I benefited from that. So that process continues to this day.
Yeah, I know I've experienced that in running this agency a lot, and even in my former role with rankings. It's easy when you run a business on your own to want to just do everything yourself, because nobody does it like you. But then it is hard to admit when you need to reach out and find expertise in other areas. But then when you do, it pays good dividends, because there's always something that you're not totally the best at, and having that outside help can really help excel your growth.
That's right. Exactly right. Yeah. There's a certain humility, I think, that comes with knowing, as a leader, you don't have to do everything. In fact, as a leader, one of the things you realize is what you're not good at, and finding and surrounding yourself with people who are good at those things, and having hopefully the wisdom and the humility to say, this person can really do that and really run with it. And that's what I need. And I've been fortunate, because I have been able to surround myself with some real quality people. And I think that's another really important aspect of, moving forward.
Agreed. So Bert, in your years of experience, what's been the best, not the best, but maybe like the most effective strategy or tactic that you've used to, grow the law firm, or get more leads, or just grow the business?
Well, given my age, because I am somewhat older, Matthew, I can tell you that I probably reflect a transition point for a lot of lawyers, in the sense that I was raised in the law when one-on-one referrals were very much the way people did business. You developed a network of referring attorneys who didn't necessarily do the kind of work that I did, and they would refer those matters to us. And that can be, and it remains, very effective. But I would say that probably the turning point was realizing that the world had moved from print to digital, and that may seem so fundamental now, but there came a point, I remember in one year, many years ago, where we simply looked at what we budgeted for other sorts of advertising, whether it was, and a lot of it was print. And it was so clear that we simply needed to move that to digital advertising.
What year do you think that was?
That was, for us, I would say we were a little later, because we were having a fair amount of success in the more traditional model.
Yeah.
Because we valued our reputation, and I think we were respected for what we did. So those sorts of referrals were coming. But I would say just within the past 10 to 15 years, really.
Okay.
That recent. And I had the good fortune of reaching out to someone locally in Connecticut who was someone who mentored other folks and encouraged me to think SEO and think search engine, work, and referred me to someone who ultimately was very helpful to me, and then in turn introduced me to you.
Okay.
So cool. I will tell you that that was so clear to me, and it's something I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah, it's amazing how much it's snowballed. And when you say the past 15 years, it sounds about right. Because, even though the internet was, alive and well at the turn of the millennium, a lot of people didn't start taking it seriously until later on in, 2005, 2006, and later. And it's growing exponentially now. And there's still holdouts, but I agree too, to your point about referrals. Like, we develop really strong referral networks for our agency, and that's still a really great way to get business, is just developing relationships. And even in the work that we do, in helping rank client websites, relationships are extremely important, because
that's right.
It's just gotten very sophisticated. But that's cool. That's really great. I think you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are some tools or software that you've used throughout your career that have really been essential, like life-saving tools? Like, I know there's a lot of chat, there's a lot of case intake software, business management software, things like that. What's been kind of like a mainstay for you, or something that's really helped run your law firm more efficiently?
Well, it's interesting, we, again, maybe because we had some success early on, we developed our own organic kind of management software.
Okay.
But over time, that universe has exploded, as you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition, a lot of people in that space. And we have moved recently to a new management software, which we're excited about. I think there's a lot of good products out there, but I do think that in order really to have a better handle on what's going on in your own firm and how to measure what's going on and identify trends, I think that's really important. So I would say that. And in terms of, social media, again, people are all very different about that. Well, the one thing I would say is that I am completely convinced now that those are the places where we need to be more active. So we're trying, and I made commitments to place ourselves through the help of others with information about ourselves in various forms of social media. And that's how we're pivoting increasingly. We've made a commitment to do that, and we want to do that. I mean, that's just the way that the world has moved.
Yeah, it's definitely shifting that way. For the management software, did you go with like Clio or one of those?
We went with a product called CloudLex.
CloudLex,
which is very much focused on plaintiff's personal injury. I think, as they say, there's a number of good products out there, but this one tends to be more focused on that. And it's interesting, we had just made a commitment to do that just prior. We're having this discussion during COVID-19.
Yeah.
And prior to that, we had made a commitment to move in that direction. All our matters were being migrated, so to speak, into that system just as COVID-19 hit. So what it allowed us to do, though, was to pivot more nimbly, so to speak, to working in a remote capacity.
Did that kind of ease the transition?
It has, and there's been a sense in which COVID-19, it's been very painful in so many ways for a lot of people, but for those of us fortunately have been able to stay healthy, it's given us some pause time, to kind of maybe rethink and pivot if in a different direction. So the timing in that sense has been helpful.
That's cool. It's cool to hear that. I love, it's one of my favorite things about business is just how, all businesses, not just law firms, can be so organic and change the way they behave to adapt to market conditions. And if you had to give advice to like another law firm who was struggling during this time, like if they couldn't find a way to adapt and change their business to be successful in the time of COVID-19, what kind of advice would you give them?
The thing that I have heard and I do believe in, is that when a challenge hits, when struggles occur, that's kind of where some things kick in from very basic lessons I learned, growing up, which is now it's the time to be resilient. Now it's the time to work harder. Now it's the time to maybe think out of the box for yourself. I mean, for me, moving from digital, print to digital was really thinking out of the box. It may have been obvious to other people. So this might be a time when instead of pulling back, and again, this is not my own idea. I've heard this from a number of sources. Now is the time to commit yourself to a new strategy, to commit yourself to SEO, or to commit yourself to more presence on social media. Instead of pulling back and retreating, be strong and kind of, the phrase I've heard is put your foot on the pedal. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Our instinct is to pull back. Yeah. But I think this, the world we live in, it's that doesn't work. And the truth is, people in my life and in your life, when we've encountered challenges, that's not what we've done. We've faced them and tried to deal with them. It just might mean thinking out of the box a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I like, and as I told you, I have a lot of kids, and I know you come from a large family, and that's kind of one of the things I've told them growing up, because um, there's always challenges in sharing resources and having to empathize with others in larger families, and I think that is going to help, help them succeed later on in life. And maybe that was your experience, where maybe you were forced early on to have to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because we care about the people in our lives, we want to do things for them, but sometimes I have to be reminded to pull back and, where did we gain our strength from, right?
Yeah.
Because, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I have one final question for you, Bert, and you kind of touched on this a little bit too. If you were talking to a lawyer going into private practice for the first time, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
It's interesting because I've been teaching at the UConn Law School for the past 20 years. So I have these young lawyers in front of me a lot.
Oh,
and,
you probably, you have lots of advice to tell them.
Yeah, well, you know what I try to say to them, and I think about this for myself, Matthew, is trying to, as best you can, and this is going to take some time, finding the right fit for yourself. Because I do believe to some extent, there's a lot of things we can learn and we can change and we can adapt in certain skills. But I think all of us have a certain temperament, call it a gift, a certain talent to really move powerfully in a certain direction. And if you can find that out, that kind of those areas where you really find the most passion, joy, where things kind of click for you, try to find them, because it can be tough when you see someone practicing and you can tell they're just kind of running up against their own instincts. It's just not something they feel really very good about. And it really varies. Again, going back to my family, one of the cool things about a big family is that you can look around before you leave the house and see there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different styles. What works for one person is not going to work for somebody else. What I am doing, practicing, this is the right fit for me because it allows me to fight for people, to help people. It's very person oriented. It's kind of a manageable scale that I like. That might not be the right thing for somebody, right next door, or even, someone close to me. So what I would say to them is spend some time trying to figure that out. That might mean a few different stops and starts, in terms of trying different workplaces, but ultimately try to find them, because I think if you find that, you're going to have a lot more satisfaction and you're just going to be better at what you do. So that's what I often encourage the students to do. It might not be your first job. It might take you a little bit of time to figure that out.
That is for sure, and that's great advice. We've been listening to Bert Polito of Polito and Harrington. Bert, where can people go to learn more about your firm?
We are located in Waterford, Connecticut, and we're happy to have people reach out to us. You should be able to find us. We're at www.politolaw.com. And Matthew, it's good to talk to you. Good to be able to share some thoughts.
Yeah, that's awesome, Bert. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for listening to the ESQ Marketing Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.